Okay, behind me, the GTR is now sitting in, its final high build primer, I guess you call that. It's like a Nardo grey, looks pretty cool. It's basically the last primer that I'm gonna do before I put a top coat on. Base coat, top coat, whatever you want to call it, and then a clear coat. I'm not going to base and clear coat underneath the car. I'm going to use a underbody coating like this one here. We'll get into this soon. But first of all, I'll go over some of the paints or the primers that I've used and just show you what I've used, the spray gun and stuff like that. A quick little rundown is prepped all the shell and everything on the rotisserie, then done epoxy, 2K epoxy primer, the whole thing that comes out in kind of like a beigey sort of yellowy cream sort of color. And then I sanded all that sort of down, made it all nice and smooth. There were a couple of little runs. It was my first time spraying with this sort of setup. I've never really sprayed before. I've done rattle cans and I have sprayed previous cars back in my teens, but not to this extent because I bought a new compressor. I got a spray gun. The spray gun's a 1.7 mil to do epoxy primers and everything like that. I'm now going to have to change the gun, back where I was saying, the epoxy primer was sanded down, checked it all over and everything, got rid of some of the runs, nothing too crazy, and then set up the booth again. I just do like a plastic booth every single time. Poured half of it down already, and then I sprayed the high fill primer. It's had 2 days to cure now, and I'm gonna now do a seam sealer over some of the areas underneath, and then I'm gonna do an underbody coating underneath the car. You can't spray paint over the top of this underbody coating because it's like a wax-based sort of style. Some of them you can. This one's more of a heavy duty, but you can't paint over the top. I kind of wish I could paint over it, but it doesn't really matter. It just means that this is the final for underneath the car, which is pretty cool. There's a couple of other little bits and pieces. I have to put some caps on and everything, some little plates for the standard holes that are in the floor pan and stuff like that. But I'll run over some of the paints that I've got here. 1 second. Okay, this was the epoxy primer. That's from Valspar, a pretty good brand to just get it locally on the Gold Coast on Lawrence Drive there. That came out pretty good. Sanded it down. It could have been a little bit better than what I've done with this one. This one came out really well, but this is a bit more forgiving. This is just like a surfacer sealer primer. It's a bit more forgiving, and now that I've got my settings right, it went on really nicely. And then this is just to reduce all the thinners that you use for each one. I've done a 4:1 ratio, which you do on here. You got your filters and everything. This is the gun that I used, just a stand. I got it from Trade Tools. It's a 1.7, pretty affordable. That's the puppy there. Pretty affordable. Obviously, there's a little cap that goes on the front there as well. Getting the settings right. The boys did let me know, not at Trade Tools, but at the paint shop that I went to. I ran 2 bar, about 30 to 35 PSI at the gun. I didn't have a regulator on the end here, or on the start of the actual gun. So I put it to 35 on the compressor to lose a little bit through the pipe work and stuff like that. I've had the, this one here is for the, how much air pressure is going in. I pretty much just had that wound all the way out. The fan, you pretty much wind that all the way out and then just go in a little quarter turn. So you get a nice wide spread on the actual fan. And then this is the fluid going in. You close it all the way up. And a good rule of thumb is on the back here, there's like a little marking you can see there. So you go all the way in till it's closed, and then you wind it back out 2.5 turns. That's a pretty good way to set things up. So fan all the way out and just a little quarter turn in. Fluid all the way in and then 2.5 turns out. If you know what pressure you're going to run here, just run your air pressure valve pretty much all the way out. So 100% of whatever you're supplying it goes in. And it's around about 30 to 35 PSI. Came up really well, sprayed really nice, didn't have any issues whatsoever. Another good tip that I was told as well, when putting your thinners in, because you'll put your primer in, and then you're going to mix a certain amount of hardener in there, and then you're going to thin it down. And a good rule of thumb was, I used, excuse the footage, this is what I done. Let's see if we can see it on here. Okay, 4:1 ratio. If I get this in here, I put my primer up to the 5. See that 5 mark there? So the primer up to the 5. Cool. And then I use the hardener that goes from the 5. You just pour it straight on top up to this 5 level. Cool. So that's those two. And then the thinners that you put in there, because we're doing 4:1 ratio here. So your fluid mark's going to be at this point now, because you've put these two puppies in. They say start with 15% of thinners. I found that I needed to run about between 25, nearly up to sort of the 30 mark. And how you know how thick you should want it is once you've stirred it all and it's all mixed in thoroughly, blah, 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 stop the movement of the actual fluid. And then when you pull out the stick, you will see the fluid runs off the stick and it's in a solid fluid-like motion going down. And then you count 4 seconds and that's when it should start dripping. So once again, you stir it, all mixing it up. You pull it out, it's flowing off of the stick, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 starts to drip off the stick. If it's still flowing and it's like 6, 7 seconds, you just need to put more thinners in. I was a bit skeptical at the start when I was doing the epoxy, and I ran it a bit thick. This way here, I definitely did the 4 seconds and it came up really, really well. So 4 to 5 seconds of the drip. Once it starts to drip, and you know that your thickness or your thinner amount is correct. So that's a good little tip, because that's kind of one of the hardest unknown things when you're not a painter or something like that, you know. So that's the setup there. Then today, I am going to do underbody coating. It's this one here. First of all, I'll do my seam sealer. So I'll just put it in a caulking gun. I'll go over the certain areas, give the whole sort of underbody just a light sort of sand with red Scotch-Brite. And then I'll probably only need one of these, but I got 2 just in case. So I'm going to use this puppy, and you use this gun here. So once again, you supply air to it, but there's basically no adjustability on this sort of thing. You do have a bit of a fan set up, but you don't have to run this. You can just run it straight out of here. This just penetrates into the top. Boom, boom, nice and easy. Haven't done this before, so we'll see how it goes. Should be good. Cool. Now this is the result of the final primer. I haven't sanded it down, it's just cured for a couple of days. It's come up really nice. You might notice that I have sort of like patched up some holes in here. I've kept the natural style. I didn't want to smooth everything out, but I did get rid of some holes that I don't need. Boom, boom, boom. It's all pretty good. It's looking super sexy. It's good to see it all in one color. It's very nice indeed. And like, for the sake of building a rotisserie. You can see it doesn't take much to sort of build something like this. For the adjustability and the ease of spray painting and everything, it's so worth it. It's worth the time. You know, spend half a day or a whole day sort of getting all the materials and building yourself a rotisserie. Gold. Quite like the Nardo grey. I don't know if I'd actually, you know, paint a car that colour, but it's quite cool. And this is a good opportunity to say, look, you can do this in your garage, right? This is a 2.5 car garage. I keep my S15 in here, and our other cars we drive every day are on the other side, outside. This is the new compressor. She's a beast. Trade tools, new beaut. I think it was about $900. Okay, I've just done a full sand down, wax and grease remover. I've done both sides, engine bay, inside. And now I'm going to do the seam sealer. Wish me luck. Cool. Now, that's all seam sealed. I'm happy with that. Try to respect some of the water cavities, I guess, that OEM wants to sort of expel some of the water if it does get in. Pretty happy. Now I'm just going to let that set for a little while. I'll find out how long, because I want to underseal this bad boy. I'm very excited. Okay, ready for the underseal. Masked up pretty well. Ready to rock and roll. I'm only doing part of the wheel wells. Hallelujah! Okay, all went really well. So we've got 3 coats of undercoat on that. She's thick, very thick. Looking pretty good. I'll flip it on its side, give you a better view. Looking saucy. Okay, you can obviously see where I've masked it off. It's just the way I want to do it. Just before the subframe. 3/4 of the wheel wells. Ooh, gorgeous. Bada bing, bada boom. Not bad. Not bad at all. So next up on that is I've I've sanded all of the high fill primer inside and the engine bay. I'm just going to focus on the engine bay now. I've got all the paint for it. I'm going gunmetal grey, which is the original colour. Sanded down, I'm going to seam seal everything in the engine bay. And then I'm pretty good to paint. So I'm going to do, it's a metallic paint. I bought a new gun, have to get a different size. I got a 1.4 tip on it. It's going to be 2 coats of base and then 2 coats of Valspar clear coat. Should come up pretty good. I'm also going to do, on the base coats, you do 2 base coats, 2 medium base coats, and then you turn the pressure down, because it's a metallic, on your third. You turn the pressure down about half a bar. And instead of being yay close, you're maybe this far away from the actual panels or whatever it is in the engine bay. And you're just trying to like scatter on the metallic, and it helps to make it nice and even. So I'm not too sure what that's called, but that's a tactic. So on the first base coat, just like normal, second base coat, just like normal. Then on the third, you go double the distance, less pressure, and you're just trying to like snow it on, and it helps get rid of any sort of like streaking or lines or zebra sort of style. So that's a good little tip. I haven't done it before, I'm going to do it, and hopefully she comes out beautiful. So hopefully by the end of the week, engine bay's done. But this is going to finish this one on underbody is done. Ah, yes. Oh.